Whose stories get told on Remembrance Day, and who's left waiting in the wings in silence? It's a question posed many ways by actor and author R.H. Thomson in his new book, By the Ghostlight: Wars, Family, and Memories. And let's start off with By the Ghostlight. It's a theater term.
It is a theater term. It's a very theater term. And the ghost light is, we put one light bulb, we put on a stand, and when the show's over, the audience has gone home, the actors are going home, and before the crew goes home, they put it on stage. And so the theater goes dark, absolutely black, except for this one light. And it's there for safety, to keep foolish actors like me, who come on stage at the end, from falling off the stage, but it's also there for superstition, because we wonder if the ghosts of the previous performers are in that building and they need to work. So I've often stood by that light after a show. I do a show and wherever. I've never performed in Hamilton. Yes, I have, with a Philharmonic. There we go.
Okay, we have to change that again.
Get me down here. And I've often stood by the light, and the theater's a very different space with this one light bulb, and it is inhabited. So I kind of went into my family in this way, saying, what happens if I'm standing on a stage and all my family are there, somewhere in the shadows? Can I call them out? Can I talk about them?
Right, and it's the war experiences that you want to talk about. And we've got a photo from a family steps of some of the main characters in your stories here. So who is this photo of?
This is an amazing gathering about 8 months after the war stopped.
This is the First World War.
This is the First World War. So I'm into the First World War because everyone's dead from that war.
Yeah.
We can't offend anybody because no one's left living. And this is the family gathered on the steps of a rented cottage in Ontario. And my great-grandmother is there. And you start to read the story into the photograph, you realize there's 2 men missing. And they're the ones who were but killed in the last 14 months. And there's 2 other brothers in that who will die very shortly from the effects of the war. So she had 5 sons who went over. 2 were killed there, 2 died afterwards in sanatorium, and 1 lived to be an old man. So, and in that is all that story for me. So I'm just wondering if the people who can read the book, will they be able to see a little, hear some of that story coming out of that picture.
Mm-hmm. And throughout the book, you kind of call on these ghosts whose stories we don't get to hear. So the women and the children. Yeah. And so you have a great chapter devoted to your godmother, who had a camera when she was in the field hospitals, in the army hospitals. We've got a photo of her. There she is there. But it's this photo, this next photo, of all the people that she took a photo of. So these are, this is in a home in England?
This is in a home that was taken over to be a convalescent hospital for Canadian soldiers. These are all Canadian soldiers. Mm-hmm. They're all convalescing. They're all stunningly looking at the person who took the photograph, who is my godmother. So Margaret's standing right here, and in my imagination I go and stand right beside her. So they're looking at me. So it's, how do you bring that?
How do you bring her stories and their stories?
How do we bring them to life? And how do we forget about the women, right? Mm-hmm. What about the women? What about the nurses? What about the mothers? What about the caregivers? And Margaret, through her photo album, gave me a door into the women are a huge part of that war, both on the receiving end of it and on the cheerleading part of it as well, and on the vicious end of it as well, because some of them were crying for vengeance. And you know, one of my great aunts was saying, gas them all.
Right.
It's pretty wild stuff, but I think the women are always kind of dusted aside, and you go, no.
Right. And you focus as well on one woman from the German side.
Yes. Because I do a project called The World Remembers, which is to say, if you're going to remember a war, first you got to name them.
Every single one.
And name them from all the armies. Not just from your army, because if you only name those from your side, you reinforce division. You make things polarized. So The World Remembers takes World War I and saying, okay, let's name them all. Every Frenchman, every Australian, every New Zealand, every German, every Turk, you know, every British, and then tell the families when the names are going to appear.
Right.
So
And that's a
the
project
family,
you're still working on.
and that still goes. And we don't
Yeah.
have the Russian names in yet, but we have 890,000 German names in.
Wow.
So this project, which shows the names in the Canadian War Museum, has 4.25 million names in it that we painstakingly put together over 10 years. But the idea is to remember, it's got to be personal. Unless I'm actually remembering Margaret or this person or that person, remembrance becomes kind of like a
Vague.
vague,
And very rote.
honorable,
Yes.
but general thing,
Okay.
and doesn't have power.
This book and the stories in it, and then it gets me thinking about my own stories as well. We've run out of time, but I want people to read this, because especially before Remembrance Day, because it's so personal and so well done.
Thank you very, very much for having me on.
Thanks very much. It's By the Ghostlight, Wars, Memory, and Families by R.H. Thomson.